Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce's Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 7th of September 2023. And let's get straight to the Frontline update. I did a quite late night Frontline update yesterday. I quite like doing this, giving you the update and then seeing what information comes out throughout the day and doing one later rather than my Frontline straight after this. But it does depend on whether I can get away with doing one in the evening, family time and all that. So, yeah, I'm going to play around with that idea. But it just depends what's going on in the information space, because sometimes there just isn't the information to warrant doing a Frontline update. But there is, like 3 hours later. Right, going to the Frontline, we're actually going to go to some unknown area. But the RDK, so these are the Russian Volunteer Corps, the Russians who are pro-Ukrainian, fighting across the border from Ukraine into Russia. They were active in Bryansk Oblast, which is sort of up here to the north. We have Belgorod and where have you gone? Up here, Bryansk is there, so it's this one to the north of Ukraine, just sort of northeast of Kyiv there. So that's where they were last active. It could well be that that's where they're active now. They've announced another successful fire raid on the border zone in the Russian Federation. At least one FSB officer was killed and about 10 wounded. I don't know how much effect that has had, but it will be causing the Russians something to think about and causing them to move resources around in kind of unnecessarily for them. It's a thorn in the side that they would rather be without. Right, let's go and see what Kenneth Gregg says. The Finnish fighter in Ukraine, as ever, take all of what I say with a pinch of salt. New trends indicate that the Russians have too few units. We can see this in the fact that they are retreating on certain front sections without fighting. We see this at Kamyanska, where they have retreated to positions that are more sustainable. Same applies to the north of Bilohorivka, because there are no strategically important areas. They simply go into defense after the Russians have withdrawn. Ours inspect the abandoned positions and pull back to our safe positions on the Robot. So, interesting kind of set of claims here. I think he's referring to possibly north of Bilohorivka, which is, just to let you know, this is a northeastern sector. You've got Kupiansk to Svatova to Crimea. And just south of Crimea, there is the Serebryensky forest. And Suriyat maps claim, the pro-Russian mapper claimed that the Ukrainians were pushed back in this area, but Andrew Perpetua claimed the opposite. And in fact, Suriyat maps has gone now back to the Ukrainians making gains here, and that is north of Bilohorivka. So it's possibly what Kenneth Gregg is talking about, some gains in a forest area there. But also talking about, he mentioned Kamyanska, which is this area right next to the reservoir, what was a reservoir here. So there is some success for the Ukrainians there, and he's suggesting that that's just because they don't have the troops, and so they pull back to defensive positions, which is something. There are several arguments. So what the Russians have been doing is not doing that so far. They've been maybe losing positions by being pushed out of them, but then as Ukrainians move into maybe Russian trench lines that they've taken, or tree lines or whatever, the Russians know exactly where they are, and then hammer them with artillery and everything they've got on mortars, and then do a counterattack to move back into those positions. The problem with that is that it uses up quite a lot of resources, and it can be quite attritional for them, as they are then going on the attack to retake those positions. And I've been saying that that's possibly not the greatest use of their forces, because it will be attritional to them, rather than just sit back and soak up the attack in defensive positions, and when they get overrun, move back to your next defensive position and be much more cautious in defense. Now, there are pros and cons to both of those options, but I think what Kenneth Gregg is saying here is that actually in a few places they are doing that. They are not attacking, they're ceding territory and then pulling back to defensive positions, because he says they don't have the numbers of reserves to sustain a kind of more offensive form of defense. I don't know. Let me know what you think. On the Robotina front, we have again advanced south and southwest from yesterday's positions, slowly but surely expanding into the Russians' trenches and defences. On September the 17th, he's talking now about. Swedish arrived with at least 3 cars and a lot of equipment on both of the fronts, and a rehabilitation clinic. So this is the kind of work he's doing at the moment, which is a lot of charity work to support contact zones with equipment. So he goes on to talk about that. So we'll leave him there. And then we go to Suryat maps that talks about that area I was just mentioning, the Serebryantski forest situation in Luhansk front. Ukraine has recaptured some positions in the forest of Crimea. Also talks about Ukrainians making some advances, the Russians making advances in Novoherivka. This is the area that Andrew Perpetua says is the hottest on the front line outside of probably Robotina, given that most other areas in the south are quieting down a little bit, Velika Novosilka being one example. So he says that actually there's an awful lot of activity going on in this Svatova, Karmazianivka sector, and that according to Suryat maps, the Russians have made some further small gains in the area of Novoherivka as they try and take that small village back. And then Suryat maps goes on to say one other change is here. Oh no, that's just an hour ago. So this is a new one possibly. Situation south of Bakhmut. Following the recapture of the western part of Klishchivka, Ukrainian army began advancing south towards the railway, where troops retook many positions. Hours later, the Russian army counterattacked, stopped the advance, and managed to recover some positions. So this is to say that, according to at least Suryat maps, the Ukrainians have pretty much pushed the Russians out of most of Klishchivka, apart from maybe the very north, and that they're pushing them back to the railway area, although counterattacks have ensued. And I think that's pretty much that for Suryat maps. And we'll move on to a few other sources. So, talking about the Serebryantski forest, War Gonzo has admitted that Ukrainians regained recently lost positions in the Serebryantski forest, could be this area. So that is to say that Suryat maps might well be correct in that the Ukrainians did lose some territory here and then have done a counterattack to retake it. But in fact, War Gonzo has said quite a few things. We'll come on to War Gonzo in a second, actually. We'll come on to the rest of what War Gonzo says in a second. Clarification near Bakhmut, according to Global War Monitor. I don't know whether this is signifying a counterattack by the Ukrainians taking some area here. It's not reflected in Andrew Perpetua or any of the mappers at the moment, but Global War Monitor indicating that maybe in the Bakivka area, the Ukrainians have pushed back a little bit. You've got this reservoir there. We go back to look at what they say. You've got Rose Alley, and in this tree line area by Rose Alley, so that is really looking here. It's this reservoir, that one. Rose Alley there, so it could be the Ukrainians have taken more territory just around here, pushing the Ukrainians back, or it could just be a clarification with further evidence coming out, probably the latter. And then we are moving down to Novodonetsk here, so coming right out of Bakhmut. We've already talked about how Suryat maps is emitting some Ukrainian gains in the Klishchivka area, and we come down to Novodonetsk, which is on this Donetsk southern front by Staromyrsky, Velika Novosilka salient. You've got Novodonetsk here, and this is the claim that this had been claimed maybe a week and a half ago that this road had been interdicted between Novodonetsk and Kremenchik, but that is a claim that's coming out again. There are field reports that Ukrainians have cut the road to Kremenchik from Novodonetsk. If this is true, excellent news. A subsequent advance on Kremenchik is needed to dominate the heights in the area and the road towards Mariupol and Staromyrsky, a point I made a few weeks ago. So let's just understand that I've said that these three settlements it's a triangle of settlements that can kind of help defend each other. Once one of them goes, it means that the others are weak because you can kind of flank them. So that could be bad news for Novodonetsk. And as that source says, it allows maybe the Ukrainians to get some purchase into moving towards Mariupol. So that is that source. And then we're going to go on to talk about what Gonzo said. So already we've heard about Crimea Forest. Ukraine has regained a number of positions there. But a few other things Gonzo admits. So pro-Russian ultra-nationalist source saying Ukrainians have advanced towards Luhove, southeast of Kamyanka. I think this is quite significant here. So there seems to be over in this area but we're going back to Kamyanka by the reservoir here, and it seems like this is an area that Ukrainians are having some success, and they're moving towards Luhove. So whether that's further to the west here, or whether it's coming down this road, I don't know. You'd hope that give them the opportunity to try and flank Zerebianki, which is holding out successfully for the Russians. They're able to defend that. Russian units unsuccessfully counterattacked near Robotyne. So that's happened, and the Ukrainians tried to break through towards Novoprokopivka and liberated new positions. So they both tried and succeeded, it appears there. So going back to the Robotyne front or sector, we have some success for the Ukrainians towards Novoprokopivka. There were rumors last night that they were fighting on the outskirts of Novoprokopivka. That's not the first time we heard such rumors, so take it all with a pinch of salt. Operational situation in the Tokmak direction, west of Verbove. The Ukrainians have had partial success along the defense line, as evidenced by footage from enemy drones. Russians are preparing for imminent battles in the village and are conducting additional mining. This is something that we didn't want to happen. This is the usefulness of being able to have momentum and maintain momentum and keep moving forward, because it gives the enemy less chance to settle down and be able to do defensive fortification building and mining and whatnot. In the direction of Novoprokopivka, fighting continues in the grey zone. The setting is dynamic. On the southwestern outskirts of Robotyne, fighting continues for control of a large stronghold, which is a key to the defense of Novoprokopivka on its northwestern and northern areas, I think. It seems to have finished there. But anyway, there is activity around Robotyne and Verbove, as you can well imagine. And then another source just going back to Kamyanska, and this is, whether this is, that's Wargonzo. It's just another, communication, what Wargonzo is saying, some Ukrainian advance in that direction towards Luhove. So that's basically what's happened. Not a great deal of information, but some slow and steady moves forward by the Ukrainian army, and that is good news. But at what cost is always a question. Right, military aid. Let's go on to this segment now. Yesterday, some stats were coming out that in August the US pledged less military aid to Ukraine than in any other month since May 2022. So August was actually a very low. A month of very low military aid provision by the US, possibly because right in the middle of the counteroffensive, trying to work out what's going on, and from that to work out what the needs are for the Ukrainians. US pledged $450 million worth of military aid this August. On average, it has pledged $2.9 billion per month. Now the US has 25 days to allocate $5.75 billion of military aid, or it expires. So actually, that's kind of like, right, we need to spend 5.75 billion. Sorry, let's go and do it. And indeed, subsequently, the Department of Defense announced $175 million in additional security assistance to Ukraine, so that's obviously pretty significant. But then later on in the day, the US said that they would provide Ukraine with a new aid package worth $1 billion, and that was Blinken and Kuleba, Foreign Minister and Secretary of State for the US. Foreign Minister for Ukraine meeting. They had a McDonald's, and they obviously have sorted out a deal. We will continue to be on the side of Ukraine, says Blinken, and today we are announcing a new assistance with a total amount of more than $1 billion, and that includes $665.5 million in new military and civilian security assistance. Really good news there. 2 months after the US shipped an initial tranche of cluster munitions to Ukraine to ensure its troops did not run out of ammunition, 3 American officials have said that the Biden administration is planning to send more and soon. And that's in the New York Times. So that's really good news. They are using them very, very effectively by all accounts. And do you know what? Here's something I never thought I'd say, although I think I gave McConnell some kudos within the last year again. So twice in a year. Mitch McConnell, I've never been a big fan of the turtle, says there's no excuse not to support more Ukraine aid. Bang on, mate. Well done. The US Senate Minority Leader also said he has no plans to step down from leadership with questions over his health. So he had that freezing incident recently that was just really weird and I felt quite sorry for him, actually, just another human being just having health issues. And I was thinking, yeah, your days are numbered, but he seems to be holding on. He's I don't want to get into a whole thing about Mitch McConnell, but it's interesting, his wife's relationship with Trump and his relationship with Trump and all sorts. Yeah, he's an interesting person to analyze. But anyway, that is super, super useful because you need bipartisan support. And that's a really strong message to send out there. So that's really good from Mitch McConnell. Cosmonaut Airlines, the first 15 Punisher attack drones were transferred to the armed forces of Ukraine. So this is some chap there. Well, we'll talk about what he says. The Ukrainian company Cosmonaut reported on the transfer of the first 15 Punisher attack drones to the Ukrainian armed forces. The main feature of the new drones is innovative technology that is resistant to electronic warfare and allows you to destroy the enemy deep in the rear. In total, the company is transferring 50. Quote, simplicity, accuracy, and precision are the 3 main characteristics of the Punisher. But the most important thing is that the innovative complex is resistant to electronic warfare. After all, enemy radio electronic warfare no longer allows working on objects as it was a year ago. Now, thanks to the Punisher, we have an advantage over the enemy, a soldier of the Ukrainian Armed Forces said. A member of the Punisher crew told the journalists of Ukraine Now. So that's really good news for several reasons. Obviously, they're getting decent capability of equipment to the front lines, but also it's indigenously manufactured, which is a really important component in terms of their sustainability going forward. Their military capability going forward. If they can make their own stuff and supply their own stuff at scale, then that means they can look after themselves and aren't so reliant on Western military aid, which is itself reliant on public opinion, so on and so forth. Ukrainians have hacked the email of one Russian officer and had access to a list of Cubans who went to fight in Ukraine, and there's over 200 of them. Given how tight borders are controlled in Cuba, it raises serious questions about the active involvement of the Cuban government. So I reported this yesterday, that there were these rumors that actually the Cuban government said they'd uncovered a human trafficking, illegal Russian human trafficking network that was seeking to recruit Cubans to the Russian army. And here is apparently evidence of over 200 Cubans going in that direction. So that is obviously not going to help the Ukrainians in any way, but it's really, I think it's also indicative of how desperate the Russians are. Yeah, really. Anyway, going on to geopolitical subjects now, and we're going to finally get to this topic of Romania. So what happened? Okay. There were attacks on Reni, so that's this port in the very south of Ukraine, on the Danube River, past Ishmael and Reni, and it's very close to Romania, just over the river, really. And what happened is there was a big attack on Reni and this area, as there is port infrastructure there, and grain storage and so on and so forth. So the Russians have been targeting that for some time now, and a drone was taken out and it fell on the Romanian side of the river, but the Romanians denied it. And this is a case of open source intelligence 1, Romania 0. OSINT did a job and said, we've got all the evidence points to the fact that it did fall on the Romanian side, and then the Ukrainians announced that they had photographic evidence, to support their claims that it fell on the Romanian side. Romania's denied it, and then they've been forced to admit it, right? So this is really good news for OSINT. The Romanian defense minister says the wreckage from the Russian drone fell on Romanian territory. Romania has found the wreckage, how convenient, of a Russian drone that may have been involved in an attack on the Ukrainian ports of Izmail and Reni on the Danube River, Romanian defense minister told CNN. According to him, the wreckage was found in Tulcea, Plauru region, which borders Ukraine. I confirm that parts were found in this area and may belong to the drone. Dead. On September the 4th, the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry spokesman said that Russian drones fell on Romanian territory during an attack near the port of Izmail. Romania's defense ministry said the same day that Russian drone attacks did not pose any direct military threat to Romania's national territory or territorial waters. On September the 5th, Romanian president claimed that, quote, not a single drone or any other part of any device fell on the country's territory. The military has a suggestion that fragments of the drone could have entered Romanian territory as a result of early attacks. Defense Ministry spokesman Constantin Spinu said he emphasized that this cannot be linked to the attack of drones on Ukraine that took place in recent days. I mean, how hard are they trying not to have to deal with this? Quote, if the downing of a Russian drone wreckage in Romania is confirmed, it would be a serious violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty, said the country's president, Klaus Johannes. So they are going to try to get out of this problem because obviously, it appears to me that if Romania had to admit that a drone landed in their territory and it's a Russian drone and it was attacking Ukraine and it's landed on their territory, then they have to do something quite serious. And that means a really prickly situation for them that is going to be escalatory for them, right? And ideally, they don't want to do that. So that's why they're trying every way they can to deny that this is going to happen. Romanian authorities, however, have notified NATO about the downing of the drone. So maybe they're going to say, right, okay, God, how do we deal with okay, we had to admit this has happened because open source has kind of proved it. Ukraine has got evidence for this. We have to say it's happened. What do we do? What do we do? Maybe we can pass the buck to NATO. So I don't know. I'm being a bit cynical here, but I imagine they're going to say, oh, we told NATO and it's up to NATO. And then NATO have got to make this really prickly decision as to what they do. And you can understand they don't really want to do anything because they don't want to get so directly involved. But I'm sure there's other things you could do. I mean, could you place air defense? Could you be a bit cheeky? I mean, it's about time that we push the envelope back to the Russians and saying, well, here's a red line. You've crossed it, right? So this is what we're doing. Right? Stop letting Russia hold the power here and say, right, we're going to have air defense systems positioned just inside the border in Ukraine, and I'll tell you what. In Romania, I'll tell you what. We are going to hit everything that flies within a 100-kilometer radius of the Romanian border. There, in other words, you can help the Ukrainians, but by saying this will protect our own Romanian interests as a member of NATO, and suddenly Ishmael and Reni are protected. I don't know. Could you do that? Would they do that? I would say that would be a good idea as far as I'm concerned. They probably wouldn't have the guts to do that. But sometimes you've got to take it back to the Russians. According to a journalist, the alliance countries expressed strong solidarity with Romania and added that they would closely monitor the situation. Well, that's just kind of meaningless guff, isn't it? Well, we'll monitor the situation. Yeah, we're still monitoring. Yeah, we're looking. You need to do something, and what you need to do needs to be in strong support of Ukraine. Right, this is big news and fascinating. I don't quite know what to make of it, possibly because I don't know enough of the conflict. Right, so Armenia and Azerbaijan have long been involved in a conflict, right? That is ongoing. The kind of Karabakh area. Where are we? Azerbaijan. Sorry, I was going mad there. Armenia and Azerbaijan here. Azerbaijan borders the Caspian Sea, which is the way that Iran is able to get goods up to Russia. Anyway, you've got Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. Armenia and Azerbaijan have long been at each other's throats. As far as I understand it, Russia has traditionally had peacekeepers there, but traditionally been kind of more supportive of Armenia. And now that Russia's back's been turned, Armenia has turned to the West and to the US. So we had Nancy Pelosi visited Armenia sometimes last year, which was highly controversial. But this is all about the geopolitical game of chess. And it's really significant what's going on. So what we had, so Anna Hakobian met with President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in Kyiv. So who is she? Well, Armenia provided aid to Ukraine for the first time since the beginning of the war. It's about humanitarian aid, which was personally delivered to Kyiv by Anna Hagopian, the wife of the Prime Minister of Armenia. Thank you, finally, on the light side. So this is the First Lady coming with Armenian aid to Ukraine from a nation that was traditionally being supported by Russia, that has had Nancy Pelosi go in, and that seems to be moving more into the sphere of influence of the West. Really significant. So the First Ladies of Armenia and Serbia visited Olena Zelenska in Kyiv today. So now you've got Serbia, who is a pro-Russian nation. More and more countries will turn away from imperialist Russia over time, says Visegrad 24. But whether that's true or not, it's just, this is significant geopolitical movement going on here. Now, Ruth Diamond here says, so Senior Lecturer at Department of War Studies at King's College London, Russian Foreign and Security Policy, US-Russia Relations, European Security. Okay, so she knows what she's talking about. Hard to overstate how embarrassing this is for Russia. Oh my goodness, I just got goosebumps. Armenia was one of its two closest allies among states formerly part of the USSR, with Belarus being the other. Russia's priority in the region has always been blocking US military influence and presence. What a future of Russian strategy. What she referring to particularly is not what we've seen about humanitarian aid going from Armenia to Ukraine. No, it's about this, which is a joint US-Armenia military exercises are to be held in Armenia next week. Now, these are US-Armenian military exercises while Armenia is gearing up for a war with Azerbaijan. I mean, there's some serious movements happening here. Unprecedented, and a big step considering Azerbaijan's increasing threats and military mobilization. So, the sphere, the stretch of Russia's influence is being diminished. It is being seriously distracted by the war in Ukraine, a war that it is losing. It's had 50% of its military degraded in a year and a half. I mean, if you want a return on investment for US military aid, you ain't going to get better than that. No US soldiers have died, other than some volunteers, but no US military have died. No one's been committed to the war, and yet Russia's had 50% of its military degraded. And all the while, it is losing influence in the Caucasus. And then we can talk about Kazakhstan, we can talk about other places. This is massive geopolitically speaking. So when you have people like Vivek Ramaswamy or other people, Tucker Carlson, whatever, talking about pro-Russian talking points and appeasement, you just don't know what you're talking about. If you want an increase in American influence in a really important part of the world, if you're talking about hydrocarbons, if you're talking about China and Russia, this is a super important part of the world. If you're talking about that, then what is going on is a good return on investment for US expenditure. It really, really is. Now, I got really angry yesterday about UAE circumventing sanctions, or I don't know whether that's true, that they are selling stuff to Russia, stuff that arguably they don't even manufacture themselves. So are they just another arm to the international trade? It could even come from Western companies going through Ukraine, through UAE to Russia. But they had a 149 times increase in electronic components exports, and then $0 to $64 million, wasn't it, in comms equipment? So that's an infinite increase in exports to Russia. And that really annoys me because it renders sanctions impotent. Well, CNN are reporting that Western officials are meeting in UAE to discuss sanctions against Russia. So they're onto it. Western officials gathered in the UAE to discuss sanctions amid fears that certain technology exports could be weaponized by the Russian military, CNN reported yesterday. good that they're onto that. That's great that it's that quick. Brilliant. Now, I love this. I've just mentioned Vivek Ramaswamy. Basically, he might be a smooth talker and he might be aligning himself with a lot of people who are kind of pro-Trump with a lot of the same kind of rhetoric. However, he is also lying a lot. So what he has said some untruths about Russia and about Ukraine. And particularly on that topic, he is, on many topics, he's well out, right? But on that, he's well wrong. And I love the irony of this. It's just beautiful. I had to share it with you. He's got this big banner behind him saying truth. And it's this argument from assertion. I'm the one telling the truth. But actually, when you unpick what he's saying, there's not a lot of truth in what he says. And it's just, I hate this. I hate this, like, masquerading as, it's like, you might as well say, I'm the good guy, right? And it's like, you can't just say that. You've got to wear your receipts, man, because the receipts I've got on you show that you don't talk the truth. So, yeah, I hate that. Anyway, this is just delightful.
At the fair in Lancaster earlier today, and during that,
I just love that. I love it. Brilliant. Just got to watch that again. Yeah, the truth falling on him. Truth is getting his revenge on Vivek Ramaswamy. Brilliant. Brilliant. Wish I caught that on camera. Right. Anyway, finally, we have something else, which is just a bit of light sidebar here. So I mentioned earlier that Kuleba met with Antony Blinken and they went to Mackie D's. They only had fries. Kuleba apparently was, regaling Blinken with stories about, hangovers, McDonald's being his answer to his student day hangovers, something like that. Anyway, absolutely, spot on, whatever. Good stuff. But this just reminds me, they're only eating fries here. Fries only for two politicians. In the UK, the former leader of the Labour Party, Ed Miliband, during a campaign to become Prime Minister, was caught eating a bacon sandwich, and it all went wrong, and it all spilled out everywhere, and that was just absolutely used against him. It was just a really bad PR loss for the Labour Party and for him personally. Just that simple thing, that whole bacon sandwich episode or whatever it was, and food going everywhere and being a complete mess. And just never eat food on camera. If you're a serious politician, just don't lay yourself out for eating food. If you do, make sure it's something like fries. You can't go wrong with fries. So there they are, sharing some fries, not chowing into a Big Mac that's going to squirt over your face. Not a good look. So yeah, I thought I'd add that one in there. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate all your support. Toodle pips. Speak to you soon.